So it's all to play for still.
I think so. Do you want to bet against us?
Hi, villains, and welcome to For the Love of Paul McGrath podcast. And I am absolutely stoked and delighted today because, number one, I get to talk about Cheick Doucoure, who's somebody that I've had a little bit of a man crush on for the last probably about 5 to 6 months. But secondly, got fantastic Villa analytics on. And how are you doing, Steve?
Yeah, not too bad. Very, very excited to talk about Cheick Doucoure as well.
Yeah, he's I know that you've been into him as long as I have too. But first, before we get on to it, tell me about hashtag Villa Spaces. Congratulations on that. That's been an absolute monumental success, and I suppose long may it continue for yourself. And so I just wanted to say fair play on that. It was really good. It kept sent a lot of people to bed with a positive mental attitude, I think, with those bedtime stories. So fair play to you guys for keeping those poked out to us. Over testing and trying time for us.
I appreciate that. Anyone who's watching who got involved with that, thank you so much, because it was the whole community engaging with it is what made it really good for us, I think.
Yeah, and that was exactly, and that's what needed to happen, because. And I promise this is the last time I'm going to talk about Jack Grealish, but I think what needed to happen, it needed to be a collective grieving period, because that helped us get over an awful lot quicker. Because if everybody was going through the grief curve at the same time, and somebody was down in the depression stage, and other people were coming out of that, you might be able to drag, that person might drag people down. So it's just fantastic. I thought it was really good, and as a fan base, we did get over it, and we showed what we're made of, and it just cemented how fantastic the Villa fan base was. So well done on that. But as I say, we're going to chat about Cheick Doucoure today, and as I say, I really, really like him, and I'd be really interested to see what you think makes him tick. So just to kind of explain to the viewers or to the listeners what's going to happen here, I actually recorded a video on Cheick Doucoure myself, so I'm going to be quiet, which you're all going to be delighted about for the majority of this. And after we get the pros view here from Steve Villa Analytics, I'm going to play my own little piece on it, my own little dissection that I did and why I like him and why I think he's perfect for Dean Smith. But the floor is all Steve's first to tell us what he thinks about him. So give us the lowdown on him. What's your view on him, and where do what have you seen from him that's actually that has made Aston Villa want to open the purse to try and pursue him?
Well, I've been saying all summer long, we need a defensive midfielder. We need someone who's going to be active in the midfield, who's going to make a lot of big defensive impression on teams, and also someone who's a better ball player, because obviously we've got Marvelous Nakamba in there who's got his wonderful ball-winning skills, but once he does have the ball, he's obviously not the best in the squad at playing it. So I've been absolutely desperate for someone who will win the ball a lot so they can play alongside maybe Douglas Luiz, but can also play it forward, maybe carry it a bit, a really reliable passer. And I think Cheick Doucoure is all of those things. I think offensively, he's an exceptional ball carrier. I saw a tweet by Who Scored the other day, which I think said he was the second highest in Ligue 1 for his dribble success, which is obviously incredible.
Was it after Mbappe or someone like that? I think it was.
I can't remember who it was after. I don't think I paid too much attention, to be honest. Other than the fact that
didn't matter. We weren't linked to who was first.
Exactly. So that on the ball quality is obviously amazing. I think he's got brilliant passing range. I can't remember exactly, but I think it's something like 88% is his long passing completion, which is whatever it is absolutely incredible. Pass over long distances, dribble the ball, and then off the ball, very, very intense. A lot of pressures, a lot of interceptions, a lot of tackles, really, really high pressure success numbers as well. Obviously combining that defensive quantity with the quality, which is really, really important, because I think we have lacked that player who can sit in front of the defence and really, really disrupt opposition play, which I would love Douglas Luiz to do, but he doesn't quite have that defensive side to his game at the minute.
What I can actually do is like I've done a little graphic here, and I suppose this might make it easier to kind of see what you speak of, the truth that you speak, Steve. So just give me a moment. Yeah, and like this is, whoa, I think that's going to look absolutely awful, but it is basically, as you were saying there, that he has a fantastic ability to play a long raking ball and to play it on target. So this is production at its highest, guys. This is why you tune into YouTube. And if you're not tuning into YouTube and you're listening to the audio podcast, it's fine. You're not missing much. I'll be honest with you there. It's just an old fella trying here to resize the screen. But this is what we were talking about there when you said it, was that he's an 84.4% long pass success, and like that puts him in the top 4% of all midfielders in Europe. Now, look, granted, there are how many midfielders and defensive midfielders are going to play long balls, but you're better looking at someone who can do it as opposed to looking for somebody who can't do it. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, absolutely. And especially now we've got, Leon Bailey in there, who's going to be running in behind with all this pace. Having more players who have that range on them that they can just put him in behind out of nowhere is always going to be a good thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you say that, you mentioned, I suppose you mentioned with the Villa guys and what they actually, what Dean Smith has asked them to do over the last season or so. Do you think someone like Cheick Doucoure is going to come in here and is going to probably tear up the rule book with regards to what Smith has asked the midfielder to do? Or is it going to be a plug and play option in your view?
Definitely. I think he'll put a real different dynamic on our midfield. I think he'll free up whoever, if it is still the 4-2-3-1, which I think it might be, but it might not be. If it is that, he'll really free up his playing partner. If it's a 4-4-2, I think he gives us the license to do that, because in a 4-4-2, obviously lacking that extra man, you need someone who's going to cover a lot of ground, play really intense brand of football, and Cheick Doucoure offers that. So I think he essentially just opens the door to more possibilities for Dean for his midfield, just by being that different option that's so useful to top teams. You look at the likes of Fabinho, Casemiro, Rodri, for example, how much they free up the midfield that they play in, particularly Rodri. You can have Kevin De Bruyne and Bernardo Silva, for example, or maybe Jack Grealish next season, playing in a midfield with that one exceptional ball winner, ball player, whole package player that Cheick Doucoure is. So I think the tactical options that he provides, Dean will absolutely love.
It's interesting that you say that, because Dean Smith, probably the biggest criticism, well, apart from he makes his subs so late, was that Dean Smith was tactically rigid last season. Is it a case this season, and I suppose realistically, if Cheick Doucoure comes in here, that's what Dean Smith doesn't want to have to happen? So what I'm trying to get at here is, and this is completely off topic, but is it a case of horses for courses? The reason that Dean Smith was technically rigid last year, maybe he understood that Ross Barkley wasn't able to do the shift that he wanted him to do, and that's what kind of painted him into a corner from playing that kind of rigid tactic last season.
I mean, I hope so. I'm not necessarily too optimistic. I think I would have the same criticisms of Dean, in that I think particularly in midfield areas, he maybe doesn't, and I don't want to be too harsh on him, but I think he sometimes misses the mark a bit, I think, in terms of structuring the midfield. There was quite a few times last season, I think of Brighton at home, they were able to bypass our midfield very, very easily. Southampton at home as well. When we played Leeds, when we played West Ham, I think these really tactically aware teams with, very, very technical managers like, Bielsa, Potter, Hasenhüttl, were the teams that were able to beat us, that maybe that they were teams that we didn't get as many points as we'd have hoped against. And I think that would be the reason.
Yeah, and you actually named the three. I suppose they're the three, and probably Sean Dyche as well. The fact that that game against Burnley when we absolutely battered them and just couldn't score that goal. And do you think that Dean Smith is going to want to dispel that? Do you think it bothers him? Do you think he's going to want to dispel that myth, maybe, or to try and disprove it as a myth that he is tactically inflexible?
I mean, for sure, that will have been something in their end of season reviews internally within the club. They will have observed that it was against these, very similar groups of teams that we really, really struggled against. And I'd like to hope at least that, we picked out the reasons why, and that will be why we're after a midfielder of this profile. One thing that I did notice when I was having a quick check of Doucouré's numbers a couple of days ago was that on FBref, which is obviously StatsBomb's, uses StatsBomb data, on their similar players model, the number one player was Pape Matar Sarr, who obviously we went after earlier in the window, which suggests we have very much looked at this is the profile of midfielder we want. We went for Matar Sarr. They wanted a bit too much money, so now we've gone for the next best thing according to our scouts, according to our recruitment team.
And potentially, maybe and I love this, that sometimes the fan base, and I'm guilty as hell of this as well, they can kind of think that, okay, we didn't get Pape Matar Sarr, he must have been our number one transfer target. And I think, the beauty of this is with Aston Villa this season is everybody thought Tammy would have been our number one transfer target for a striker, but turns out it was Danny Ings, all along, because money was similar. And when Danny Ings, like Tammy was potentially the backup, and maybe there's something along the lines here. Maybe they went for both at the time. Lance were kind of saying, yeah, listen, maybe we don't really want to sell Cheick Doucoure. We see more for him at the moment. And then they went after Pape Matar Sarr, and then Met said, yeah, give us 30 million for him or whatever. And Villa went, no, too rich for our blood for a young improving player. And now it's just come to fruition that they've waited out the transfer market, and Cheick Doucoure might be somebody that they might look at as well. But it's really interesting the way those things happen, that we just happen to be mentioned with those people, and the way that it came up. But on Cheick Doucoure as well, when I watched a lot of his tape, do you know what you actually saw quite a bit of in him? It's Declan Rice. And Declan Rice is being touted at 80 million. And with regards to, I suppose, the market inefficiencies that Villa are going to look for, obviously looking at maybe at a 21-year-old Malian international playing in the bottom half of Ligue 1, if he can give you statistical output of somebody that is playing for West Ham and England, just got to a European Cup final, and if all things are believed, people want record transfer fees for him. Why wouldn't you take advantage of those market inefficiencies?
Absolutely. And to be honest, with Lons as well, Seko Fofana also plays in midfield with Cheick Doucoure, who I absolutely love as well. And I'd be delighted if we could do a little double transfer on them too. I think our midfield is getting quite packed out. Obviously, we have quite a lot of options in there, but I am a massive, massive fan of Seko as well. I think Lons, for a bottom half French team, as you say, I love them. I just love those two in the middle. I love to watch them. And I was actually watching... It's quite funny, actually, because I was watching Lens versus Rennes with my dad the other day. And obviously, Rennes have so many fantastic talents, Camavinga, Kamaldeen, Doku. And then we were talking about, me and my dad, talking about Seko Fofana. And then we started talking about Cheick Doucoure, and we were saying, this could really work for Villa, getting Cheick Doucoure in. And then the very next day, open up Twitter in the morning, Aston Villa are interested in Lens Cheick Doucoure. It's like, hold on, have they got a microphone in our living room or something?
Yeah, exactly. It's actually a really interesting one, because when the news broke, it was I can't remember exactly who it was. I think it might have been Goal.com had something to do with it as well. But they referenced Atalanta as well in the release. Let's say that it was Atalanta and Aston Villa, and that really rung true with me, because when I was speaking to Fabrizio Romano, name drop, shameless name drop. When I was speaking to Fabrizio Romano, he mentioned Villa and Atalanta as, that there's kind of swirling winds in European football about what the two clubs are doing, and people are beginning to look up and go, "Whoa, these guys are after cracking something here." Whether it comes to fruition or not for us, Atlanta, you could say maybe they have cracked it, considering they've played Champions League football recently, and they're playing at the top of Serie A. But it's nice to be mentioned in those brackets, isn't it?
Yeah, he mentioned one other as well, didn't he, Fabrizio?
Mentioned Leicester ourselves, and Atlanta, yeah.
And well done on getting that, by the way, getting a little connection with Fabrizio Romano. That's. I couldn't believe it when I saw that he was your special guest.
I couldn't believe it either. Believe me, if it had fallen through, I wouldn't have known what to do. I would have hid for about 2 weeks. But thank you very much for that, and it is nice to hear that, especially from somebody who is so widely respected, I suppose. We tend, in a reactionary sense, when a journalist gets something wrong, there tends to be a piling on him, but people are very, very slow to kind of appreciate them when they do get stuff right, and more often than not, he does get stuff right. And yeah, it might be obvious stuff or whatever, it might be stuff, but he is a good reporter, and I think the here we goes are worth an awful lot. When you see them, you can almost be guaranteed that it's, unless there's something catastrophic like what happened with Messi, that it's going to be 100%. Transfer gone through. So hopefully we get a here we go with Cheick Doucoure as well.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. One thing I suppose I found with Cheick Doucoure was that he had he was able to carry the ball out of trouble as well, Steve. So like when we look at the team that we have here at the moment, obviously losing Jack, John McGinn did it in his first season. Douglas Luiz doesn't carry the ball out of trouble, and Nakamba certainly doesn't carry the ball out of trouble. Do you think that's probably something Dean Smith was looking for, or is still looking for, whether it be a Cheick Doucoure or whether it be somebody else?
Well, I think that's something that we can develop with Douglas Luiz. I think especially Man City away, like the season just gone, Douglas was, letting it run through his legs and seemed to play with a lot of confidence. And that's my real big thing with Douglas, is when he looks like he's playing with confidence and playing openly and expansively, he can be so brilliant. And I think that Cheick Doucoure type player will really bring the best out of him, maybe taking his worries a little bit off the defensive side and making him have a bit more confidence. Because I think particularly when it's Douglas Luiz and John McGinn, for the both of them, they know that the player next to them isn't the biggest defender, isn't really going to be there to bail them out of trouble if they do lose the ball. They know that, Douglas, every time he receives it, he knows, if I get tackled here, they're straight through on the back line.
Yeah.
Whereas with Cheick Doucoure, he might be a bit more protective, a bit quicker to react. I think Douglas will be able to sit in a slightly higher space, have a bit more confidence when he receives the ball. So I think it would really give us that dual effect of having Doucoure, as you say, is that ball carrier to relieve the pressure, but also I think that'll bring that side of Douglas's game out in a big way as well.
And that's interesting, because I think Douglas Luiz wants to pass the ball more. I think he wants, he has itchy feet, essentially, and yes, when he came in and he was proving himself in the after Project Restart, and he had to protect the D at the front of in the front of the area, front of the goals, he did a fantastic job there. This season, not so much. Well, but that's not to denigrate him and say he did a poor job. I just think that this season's midfield was a lot more open than anybody wanted it to be, due to the fact of maybe the positioning of Ross Barkley, maybe the work rate, ethic and rate of Ross Barkley. I think it kind of exposed McGinn and Luiz within that system a small bit, and we didn't see the best out of the two of them. So maybe going back to playing a system where you've got 2 6s and an 8, or a 6 and 2 8s, as opposed to 6, 8 and 10, on the field, might actually suit Douglas Luiz. And it's worth noting that, Douglas Luiz, even bad form, or lesser form, should I say, than he had previously, even that taken into account, didn't seem to deter the Brazilian national team from selecting him for the Copa, no. And it certainly didn't deter him from going and winning a gold medal with the Brazilian Olympic team. So he's coming back on the crest of a wave, and if we get in somebody like a Cheick Doucoure, they're going to have a hard job on their hands to try and displace him.
Absolutely. 100% agreed.
So, if this was to come to fruition, do you think Cheick Doucouré starts day one? Not day one, obviously, because he's not going to play on Saturday. But do you think that he comes in and he displaces somebody straight away?
Yeah, for definite. I think we're absolutely screaming out for that profile. So 100% for me.
Next question is who? Who does he displace?
I don't think it will be a permanent. I think there'll be rotation in the rest of the midfield. I think it depends as well on if we sign another winger or not, or another attacking player, which we have been linked to, but I'm not too sure if we will. So if we're going for the 4-4-2, I'd probably go with. To be honest, my first choice would usually be Doucouré and Douglas Luiz, with whoever it is in front of them. I think John McGinn can play a big role as well. I'd much prefer him in a higher space where his ball receiving qualities are, put to more use. But if it's going to be in that deeper line position, probably Douglas Luiz for me.
Yeah, you just actually sparked something in my mind. Could you imagine the two of those, Douglas Luiz and Cheick Doucouré, playing behind John McGinn, but John McGinn was actually playing in that, I'm going to call it 10 position. He's playing in there. And could you imagine if we had Ollie Watkins on the left, Buendia on the right, and Ings up front? The press from those four would be frighteningly good. We're talking Barcelona 09, 10, or whatever that era was, that first era where they actually just press people off the park. That would be amazing. The work rate up there would be fantastic, and maybe we will go into some games like that. And the reason I asked the question was who does he displace? It wasn't to put you on the spot. The reason I asked was let's get giddy if somebody like this comes in, because we've got options. And I think the days of seeing somebody play 37 out of 38 games and touching on 3,000 minutes, I think they're going to be gone soon for Aston Villa, and that can only be a good thing, because we won't have the mid-season slumps.
Yeah, I was saying, and I'm not sure where, it must have been on one of the Villa Spaces, but a couple of weeks ago, about how in the Premier League, the real difference is teams like Villa, like Leeds, for example, might have a good player in 9 or 10, like a really good player in 9 or 10, out of 11, obviously, positions on the pitch. Whereas teams like Chelsea, Man United, Man City, especially Man City, will have 4 or 5 quality options in every single position. And it's just that backup, that ability to make tactical decisions with your lineup as well as with the set 11 that you've got, or maybe changing 1 or 2 players, and that ability to make subs that will really change the game rather than just El Ghazi on for Trezeguet, which is obviously, it's fresh legs, but it's not really going to change the dynamic of the game at all, is it? No. But if, like you say, for example, we could line up with a 4-4-2 with Bailey, Buendia, Ings, Watkins, Douglas, and Doucouré, and then we could sub off. If Danny Ings got a bit tired, we could sub off Danny Ings, bring on John McGinn, shift to a 4-2-3-1, and then we've still got a really, really strong team out there, completely different tactically, but everyone's still comfortable. Everyone's still of a high quality in those positions. So if it wasn't working for us in the 4-4-2, that can change the game on a hairpin right there. And that, I think that's the real difference. And that's what now, the privilege of being able to spend 100 million a year without having to sell. Obviously we did sell Jack Grealish, but without having to sell 4 or 5 players a year, means that those players that were our starters then become our subs, and everyone else gets knocked down without them having to leave, which gives us that backup.
And you know what? Future proofing. That's what it also does here as well. Like, we might bring in Cheick Doucoure in, and look, this might all be pie in the sky stuff. We might not sign him at all, but do you know what? I'm going to enjoy talking about him, because if we did bring him in, what I might do is it might future proof us that if Douglas Luiz does get, like, if Villa get a 35 or 40 million bid for, like, call it unlikely, but let's say they do, from a Champions League team, the dreaded Champions League team again, and Douglas Luiz decides, listen, lads, I need to go. I'm 20 whatever, and I want to go and I want to win cups, and I want to go and play in this league or whatever. Let's say somebody like Atletico Madrid came in and said, we want Douglas Luiz, here's 30 million. we've kind of seen that we might be powerless to stop that from happening. But what I think the brain trust is more intelligent than why I think it's more intelligent than previous brain trusts we've had is that if you bring in somebody like this, well then hey, yeah, we can let Douglas Luiz go. We'll send him off. We'll get we'll get a profit from him, and we already have somebody who's bedded in underneath with maybe 15, 16 games under his belt the season previous, and it doesn't really disrupt the apple cart as such. Like, yes, Jack Grealish going is going to disrupt it, but we got guys in before we let him leave. And I think that Aston Villa will want to kind of future-proof their squad going forward now that they have shown that, they've shown this ambition over the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, definitely. And not only in terms of having that replacement ready, but also putting us in a stronger buying position. If we then look for someone else, for example, if we sold Douglas Luiz, like the example you use, rather than us scrambling going, right, we need a defensive midfielder in the door. We go to Brighton to try and sign Basuma, and they go, right, we know you need a defensive midfielder, so you can give us 60 million. Whereas now we can go, no, hold on, we'll just put Cheick Doucoure in there with John McGinn.
Yeah.
See you later. And they'll be like, all right, go on, 40 million, have him.
Yeah, I think there is a lot of that horse trading as well that goes on in transfers as well. And from memory as well, as I say, I did do a video on Cheick Doucoure prior to this, and I actually think I mentioned that along with the market inefficiencies, because without spoiler alert, and keep watching the video till the end, you'd be surprised how similar Cheick Doucoure and Yves Bissouma are from a statistical point of view, guys. You'll be really surprised. You'll be surprised with some of the stats that are thrown up. So if you are listening to this in the audio podcast, watch the YouTube one where you can see the graphics as well. My eyes nearly popped out of my head when I saw some of the differences between Cheick Doucoure and the other players that I felt were similar to him when I watched him. Steve, thanks so much for popping on. Before I let you go though, I'm just going to ask you, I suppose, one more little kind of transfer related question, and it's do you actually think, like, we're sitting here on a presumed transfer or a hopeful, more so of a hopefulness side of things from a transfer, but do you think Villa are going to bring in more than one player? Do you think they even sign one more player before the end of the season, or do you think what they're doing is they're keeping their powder dry, and if the perfect opportunity presents itself, they're going to jump in it?
I reckon we'll definitely bring in a defensive midfielder. Whether that's Doucouré, whether it's Ward-Prowse, whether it's someone else. I wouldn't be too surprised to see us bring in a backup goalkeeper. Then I think we'll be, as you say, really biding our time, seeing if the right option comes up winger-wise. I think we'll be open to that, but I don't think we will. And I think that'll be all of it for us.
Yeah, I think, to be honest with you, I don't think any fan can turn around and say that, well, they didn't do enough, because once again, it would be another transfer window whereby we fill the gaps. Well, yes, I know one of them was huge, but we would have filled the gaps within the squad and potentially added a small bit of gravy on top. So yeah, I like that. If we got those two players in for certain, I think we would be absolutely delighted, because one that kind of slides under the radar is the fact that we have 4 pretty quality centre halves in there at the moment, and we've got I think our backs are sorted, or four backs, and the rotation that we have in there is pretty much sorted. It's really just a case of looking towards the midfield, making sure that we don't come a cropper in midfield, and maybe give the option to somebody like Jacob Ramsey or someone like that to maybe go out and loan, and if not, well, we're confident enough with him staying around the squad. So, Steve, thanks so much for popping on. Really, really appreciate it. Everybody, there's no point in me saying this. I've said it before. I've had Steve on the podcast a couple of times, but follow him on @Villa Analytics if you aren't already. Get involved in his #Villa Spaces as well. And whenever you see them pop up on Twitter. Thank you so much for popping on once again, Steve. Next, after this, I'm just going to pop in the video that I did on Cheick Doucoure. So hope you enjoy it, and up the Villa. This has actually been a pretty busy week. I think there's been a podcast almost every night, but I wouldn't have it any other way, especially coming up to the season. And today I want to talk about an absolute personal favourite of mine, Cheick Doucoure from RC Lens. Somebody I've mentioned a couple of times. I mentioned it to him coming up to the end of the season last season as maybe a central midfield / defensive central midfield prospect that I would take a look at, certainly if I was doing the transfers. And lo and behold, there was a rumour that we were interested in him. A rumour came from goal.com, and also there was one or two other reporters that mentioned it, some reputable, some not. But Cheick Doucoure is apparently tickling the fancy of Aston Villa and of Atalanta at the moment. So I wanted to have a quick look at him. You know, I've seen a couple of games of his. I've watched 5 of his games. I've watched 1-0 win against PSG, 2-1 win against Montpellier when he was brilliant, a 4-0 loss against Lille, I think, a 1-1 draw with Lyon and a 0-0 draw with Monaco all of last year. And the reason I picked those teams was because they were the creme de la creme in the French league. And also I picked Montpellier again because it's widely accepted that was his best game last year when he absolutely ran the show against Montpellier. But first of all, before we go into those and before we look at and talk anything about Cheick Doucoure, who is he? So he's a Malian international. As I say, he plays defensive central midfielder or a central midfielder. He's 5'10" and he's right-footed. We can see there by his heat map, he really, really loves to patrol that center circle area. Very much that complete middle third player. Loves to get involved. You can see that, you know, he just protects that center circle, protects in front of the back four, does get forward quite a lot, can carry the ball. Is a decent dribbler, is more than a decent dribbler. He had, I think he finished second for the most successful dribbles in the French league last season. So can definitely carry the ball out of trouble if needed. And that's something I think that Dean Smith really likes to have or will like to have, considering we're losing the carrying prowess of some players that we've sold this season. So looking at some similar players, statistically, he's very similar to some players, but also in the way he plays, he's similar to players as well. And I picked a kind of mixture of the two. First one we can see there is Timu Bakayoko, former Chelsea player, former Milan player, former Monaco player, played with Napoli last season and had an absolute storming season in Serie A. He's quite similar to him. Other similar players are somebody that people mention quite a lot in the same breath as Aston Villa, and I think somebody that everybody would be very, very happy if we signed, which is Yves Bissouma. Also Declan Rice, quite similar kind of play style to Declan Rice, and also Mario Lemina that was with Fulham last season and has since moved on to pastures new this season. So he is, I going to term him a complete midfielder, but I don't want to look at him in that aspect based on what the reason I think he's going to come into Aston Villa. I think he's going to come into Aston Villa to do a more defensive job. But it is interesting to look here, and this little pentagon that we have here, I think it is, that shows output based on his attacking abilities, creative abilities, technical abilities, tactical nous, and his defensive work. This comes from SofaScore, in case anybody is interested, which is a decent site, very decent site. We can see, if you look very closely, you can see that there's 3 pentagons. Obviously, you've got the outer extremities, just highlighting what the actual graph is. You've got the piece in green, which is Doucouré's output, and then inside that, you can see that there is an orange line which dictates the average value of players within that position, within the position that Cheick Doucoure played last season. And we can see that he's defensive, he's tactical, and his technical nous is far outscoring, should I say, and the average score of that position. And he's up there from a creative and an attacking point of view as well. So you can see why I was going to go down the lines of calling him a complete midfielder. I think that's very, very, very... it would be remiss of me to say that about a 21-year-old. a 21-year-old player in any league. And also, I don't think that we should look at him coming in as that all-round, box-to-box complete midfielder if he does come to Aston Villa this season. As we say at the moment, there hasn't even been any news of a concrete bid. It just seems to be reports that we're interested in him. We're speaking, and he is available for in and around 15 million euros. So, guys, just before we go any further, I would love it if you could please like us, give us a thumbs up on YouTube. Please subscribe on YouTube as well if you can do. Also, we do have audio platform as well, whether it be on Apple Podcast or whether it be on Spotify. I would really, really appreciate if you could just hit the subscribe button there. You never know, you might like what we've got coming out soon, because we've got quite a lot of podcasts coming. Please subscribe to our YouTube for our team sheet tantrums, which will come out 1 hour before every match over the coming season. And also we will be doing post-match reviews as well. But the team sheet tantrum will be exclusively and only on YouTube. So if you are interested in getting notified of when we're going live, roughly about 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes before each game for a team sheet tantrum, running down what the game is going to pertain for Aston Villa, what the team selection is like, and what the opposing team selection is like. If you're interested in that, please give us a like. Please hit the subscribe button, and please hit the little bell beside the subscribe button so you'll be notified as to when we go live. So let's take a little look at Cheick Doucoure. Here are some of his statistics. As I say, the 5 games I watched were PSG, lost to Lille, Montpellier, Lille, and Monaco, which I think are probably the strongest teams in the French league, as I said. But he played 33 games last season, encapsulating 30 starts. He had 4 goals and 2 assists, 8 yellow cards, which I would expect for somebody who's combative in the middle of midfield, and no red cards, which is always a good sign. Showed a small bit of versatility last season. He played 91 minutes as a centre half, would you believe, an auxiliary centre half on 3 occasions. He played 26 occasions. He played as a defensive midfielder, racking up 2,243 minutes, and he also racked up 677 or 99 minutes, should I say, as a central midfielder. So obviously that's going to add up more to the total minutes that he's played over the course of the season. But he has basically, this is taken based on games when he played a certain position at a certain time. So he has shown a small bit of versatility, and I think when if he comes to play with Aston Villa, it will be in the defensive central midfielder role. Where the rubber really meets the road with Cheick Doucoure is some of the fantastic statistics that he has, specifically in a defensive point of view. So I think I've cherry-picked these statistics, and I'm making no bones about that. But the reason I've done this is because this is what you want to see within your defensive midfielder. So I would like to see this. So I think Dean Smith wants to see. I think he wants to see somebody with a high tackle count, with a high tackles 1 count as well. And Cheick Doucoure ticks the boxes as they are coming in the 85th percentile within Europe's top 5 leagues. So that is really, really good. He tackles quite a lot, but he also wins quite a lot of his tackles. His tackles come in at 3.01 tackles per 90 minutes, and he wins 2.02 tackles per 90 minutes. So he's very efficient in his tackling, and he does tackle quite a lot. Those tackles then broken down within the defensive third. He's had 1.49 tackles per 90 minutes in the defensive third, which puts him in the top 10% really of all midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues over the last 365 days. And he's within the top 19% of midfield third tackles, coming in there at 1.39 tackles per 90 minutes. So this guy gets around. He's up there with the big boys, based on the statistical output for him with regards to his tackling amounts. He is quite industrious in there. Press, he's a pressing machine, and this is why I think Dean Smith really, really wants him. 36.2% is his successful pressure count. So he's successful in 36.2% of all his pressures. That puts him in the top 5% of all midfielders in Europe. And I think that, and we will see in a moment when I put him up against other players, that is quite an important statistic to see. It's quite revealing as to what I think you get from him. A real industrious player. You know, he does the basics, he carries the ball, but what he really does is he doesn't give anybody any time to settle. And those pressures are very, very evident when you watch him as well. He's had 11.26 ball recoveries per 90 minutes. I think that's something that Dean Smith wants as well. We need to up the amount of times we're recovering the ball and stopping the amount of times we're blocking shots or inviting people onto our box. And that's where I think Cheick Doucoure will show his worth. And also he's got 1.82 interceptions per 90 minutes, which puts him in the top 85th percentile. His passing stats are pretty decent as well. Long passing is quite good. His mid-range passing is so. You know, it's average, but I'll take average from a defensive midfielder any day. His short passing is a bit lower than I would like, in the 34th percentile, but I think that's based on the amount of short passes that he played last season, as we might see when we look to see comparisons against other players. So I'm really, really enthused, really enthralled by what I see with Cheick Doucoure. Not only what I see, but also what the statistics bear, and kind of they kind of back up some of the things that I've seen with him. And I think that's quite important as well, because, you know, this is what I feel Dean Smith is looking for this. So I feel the missing link needs to be somebody who's steely in defense. It needs to be somebody who wins tackles, intercepts the ball, recovers the ball, presses. And I think that will add a small bit to our team, whether Dean Smith ends up playing him in an 8 position or even in a 6 position, whether we end up playing it with a back 3, which is interesting because Nons played with a back 3 in kind of like a 3-4-1-2 kind of formation that they played last season. Whatever Dean Smith wants to do, and he spoke to Sky Sports today about tactical flexibility, maybe playing 2 strikers up front, maybe playing 3 strikers, maybe only playing 1 striker up front. I think he wants to have that flexibility then as you move back through the lines on the team. And Cheick Doucoure definitely gives you that based on what he can do with the ball and his ability to carry the ball as well. So moving on here, I wanted to put him up against players. So there's no point saying he's statistically similar or he plays similarly to players. How's about we let the stats talk for themselves and let's see where he lines up? And who better to start off with than Yves Bissouma? Everybody would love Bissouma. I haven't heard anybody say that they wouldn't like Bissouma yet, and people rattle off, that's the guy we need, the finishing touch. Well, Yves Bissouma might cost 30-40 million. Cheick Doucoure is muted to cost 15 million. And look at those statistics. While he does have a worse tackles made count and a tackles won count and tackles in the defensive third count, it's not by an awful lot. You can see he still has very high metrics. You guys see Bissouma is better in those metrics, but Doucoure gives you very much the same output based on the amount of games that these two guys have played. And where Bissouma where Doucoure really comes into it is he's going to tackle in around the midfield. I think Dean Smith doesn't want it to come to a situation whereby we're inviting so much pressure at our box again and having to block the ball like we did last season. I could be wrong on that, but I don't think any manager would want that. I think managers would want to control the game and press a small bit higher forward. Last year, we were very sedentary. We allowed teams to play through us. We set up our block very, very low at the edge of the area. And I think if there is going to be a change in formation, if there is going to be tactical flexibility, I think our block is going to come forward. I think it's going to need to come forward a small bit towards the center circle, and having somebody here who has the tackle numbers that this Doucoure has here, and we can see he's only marginally better than Bissouma, but he's still better than Bissouma in the middle third. He presses more than Bissouma. Sorry, he's more successful, should I say, in the press more than Bissouma, being successful in 36.2%. He's had more recoveries than Bissouma at 11.26, and he's intercepted the ball more than Bissouma as well. So very similar, comparable players, I think here. One costs north of, I would imagine Brighton are going to look at certainly north of 25, probably north of 30 million for him. One is going to cost maybe 15 to 17 million. The statistical outputs are very similar. The statistical outputs are negligible in the difference between the two, and we've got a younger player in Cheick Doucoure. It's very interesting. Look at their heat maps as well. Eerily similar players. And you'll see that as well when you throw on the tape and you watch him. Now, I know stats aren't everything, but they are a hell of a lot, to be honest with you. And I wanted to put him up here against Declan Rice because when I see him play, I see a bit of Declan Rice in him when he plays. But Cheick Doucoure is a better Declan Rice than Declan Rice based on the statistics. Now, look, I am fully aware statistics tell one story. And obviously, strength of opposition, different teams, different the way the teams play is different. But when we look at it here, if Dean Smith wants to get a player, and let me believe you, if it broke in the morning, Aston Villa are signing Declan Rice for 60 million, every Aston Villa fan, me included, would be streaking with excitement. But look what the stats are. And yes, I'm going to keep on prefacing this. Strength of opposition, strength of league does matter. But it's comfortable for Doucouré here when we look at this. He's comfortably ahead in most areas of Declan Rice, except for the amount of interceptions Rice has made, and except for the amount for Rice's short passing ability. It's quite interesting. I think it's quite interesting. It's food for thought. Looking at their heat map as well, Cheick Doucoure gets around the field better. He tends to hold his position a bit more than Declan Rice, and I think that is very important. That is going to be very important for a midfielder, for a Dean Smith midfielder in this coming season. Who's next? Bakayoko. Once again, sterling season for Napoli. He's been linked with moves left, right, and centre, actually. I think he's been linked with a move back to Lyon. Back to the French league, should I say, with Lyon recently. Didn't really cut it in the Premier League with Chelsea, but he wasn't terrible. I would take Bakayoko in the morning if he was offered to us because of the job he does. And we can see it there. He wins tackles at a massive rate. He makes tackles at a massive rate. He makes them in the midfield third, which I said that Dean Smith wants. But we can see here once again, the differences are negligible between him and Cheick Doucoure. And Cheick Doucoure beats him out in a lot of areas. Beats him out in the press, beats him out in the amount of recoveries, beats him out in the amount of interceptions. It's like the passing statistics are very, very similar as well. His percentage completions and so on. Bakayoko is going to cost a lot of money. Once again, it's all about trying to find market inefficiencies for Aston Villa Football Club at the moment. Find your players. Have a data-driven approach. Spoke to Josh Williams during the week. Have your data-driven approach. Bring in a player for 15. Turn him into 40, 50 million. Turn your club into a Champions League club or a Europa League club. That's how you do it. You find market inefficiencies. The inefficiency here is purchasing Declan Rice for 80 million when you can purchase Cheick Doucoure, and at worst case scenario, you purchase Cheick Doucoure for 15, 17 million. And worst case scenario, I feel you get 75%, 70 to 75% of Declan Rice based in Dean Smith's situation, Dean Smith's system. And the same with Bakayoko here. We can see it. The similarities are there. Statistical similarities for what we want to do are there. And it translates on the field as well from the games that I saw. Against Montpellier. And like against Montpellier, he had, let me think, what was it? Was it? Yeah, against Montpellier, 4 tackles and 6 interceptions in one game. You know, I know we're talking about strength of opposition, but that is phenomenal work. Oh, I forgot to throw in as well. He had a goal and he had an assist. His goal was absolutely bloody amazing. Ball just popped up to him at the edge of the area. It was a little ricochet, and he strikes the ball as clean as I've ever seen, and it just eases its way into the goals. It was a great goal. Great composure, great strike. He's got all of it. He's got technique. He moves comfortably across the field. He doesn't have to dive into tackles. Sometimes he looks a bit clumsy after the tackle. He's a 21-year-old kid. He's going to do that. Patrick Vieira didn't exactly look like a gazelle after the tackle. It took him about 3 or 4 strides to get the ball out from underneath his feet at times, but he was damn effective at what he did, and he went on to be the quintessential defensive midfielder of the late 90s. Am I saying Cheick Doucoure is going to be like Patrick Vieira? No. But what I'm saying is that you can find flaws in anybody's game. And I think that the flaw in Cheick Doucoure's game is probably that sometimes he looks a bit clumsy, but he has the physical attributes, the physical abilities, and the technical ability once he does get his feet sorted out to absolutely overcome that. And he's only 21 years of age. He only moved from Mali, or he only moved from, what was it called? It was the JMG Academy, where such great players like Solomon Kalou, Gervinho, Kolo Touré. I think that's it. I think there's a couple of more people who came out of that academy. He moved from there in 2018 as an 18-year-old kid to go to Lens. So he's only playing in Europe for 3 years. He's furthering his development, and I think he's ready to take the step up. And I think he's ready to come to Aston Villa. And I'm going to further show that as well, because we've looked at some players there. We've looked at Declan Rice, Bissouma, and Bakayoko. But let's look and see how his stats shape up against Aston Villa's players in Marvelous Nakamba. This is in no way a direct comparison, and I completely understand that. Nakamba only played 13 games last season. Doucouré played 33. But what I wanted to show here is what Nakamba is good at, what Doucouré is good at, and where potentially Dean Smith wants to have this type of player in. We can see the glaring difference here is the recovery rate. So Nakamba doesn't recover the ball. He tackles, yes, and he wins tackles at a decent rate, and he pressures at not a great rate, but he doesn't win the ball. He doesn't recover the ball back. And I think that's something that Dean Smith will want to improve, and we will see it in a moment. We don't recover the ball in midfield at all. We let the team get to the edge of our area and take a shot, goes wide, gets saved, it gets blocked. Brilliant. That was our way of winning the ball back in a good portion of games last season. If we can add a ball winner, a ball recoverer, somebody who can tackle and stay on their feet and keep the thing going. Now, I think Nakamba can do that. I just think his sample set, this is based on his sample set last year. I think his sample set last year is too low. I'm saying this being very honest, it's probably not the fairest comparison, but I just wanted to show the difference from how we played last season, which didn't really require us to win the ball higher up the field and to press, to how we could play if we played with Cheick Doucoure and what he's done really, really well in the launch system. Next, take a look at Douglas Luiz. Once again, we can see here that Douglas Luiz was the guy to recover the ball for Aston Villa last season. And that stands to reason because he was the most withdrawn midfielder. This is a more fair comparison, I think. But could you imagine if we had two people in there recovering the ball higher up the field? Could you imagine if we could get our attacks going that bit quicker? We can see here that, yes, while Douglas Luiz did recover the ball, his pressing wasn't very successful. He didn't intercept the ball an awful lot, and we can see the Cheick Doucoure, based on his statistics with Lens and Douglas Luiz statistics for Aston Villa, that he made more tackles, won more tackles, made more of them in the defensive third, made more of them in the midfield third. Once again, strength of opposition taken into account. I completely understand that, but it's interesting. If you can have somebody else that comes in here, recovers the ball at that rate, and if we don't have Douglas Luiz sprinting side to side, let's say Dean Smith goes out and plays 3 at the back with 2 number 6s in some games, would you be disappointed to have 2 people who can win back the ball at that rate? Recover the ball higher up the field so that we can get Buendia into the game, so that we can get Leon Bailey. Last year, we relied too often on drawing people onto us. When we won the ball, we released quickly through the left. We aren't going to play like that this season. At least I hope we don't, because we've got better personnel to be able to play in different ways this season. And I think this guy could really help us in that instance. So, guys, that's really it. My final kind of thoughts on Cheick Doucoure is that, while obviously, I don't know whether he's actually going to sign, I would be really, really intrigued to see how he will progress. I genuinely think he has all the attributes that I would be looking for to play that defensive midfielder position, to come in and play in a double pivot with Douglas Luiz. I think he'd actually be brilliant. I think the two of them would be excellent together in that double pivot position in front of a back 3 or even in front of a back 4. if we were to go with a flatter midfield three, having two people who can recover the ball, having somebody who can press the ball like that, having maybe having McGinn that can press the ball as well. Let's not forget that. I should really have put McGinn's statistics up here. It would have been interesting. But if we play that flatter midfield three, which I personally think we are going to play, maybe we bring Dion on the right, Liam Bailey on the left, Ollie Watkins through the centre. I don't know. It gives us options, guys. Gives us options. But I think Cheick Doucoure is good value for money. I think he's better than good value for money. I think he's somebody we will look at and we will say 15 million is great. But like, if anybody wants to sign him, they're going to have to come look for 50 from us in 2 to 3 years' time. I think he can progress to that level. Am I open to being wrong? Absolutely 100%. But since we're linked to him, and since I really, really like him, and I like what I've seen before, I really wanted to do a video on him to, I suppose, just to explain why I like him and what really makes him tick for me. And if you can go and watch that Montpellier game where they win 2-1, it's well worth watching, because that's a snapshot. He kind of kicked on from that last season. That's a snapshot of what he can do and what he can become, I think. So thanks everybody for listening. Thanks everybody for watching. Really, really appreciate everything you do for the podcast. We will be back. You're going to be seeing quite a lot of us with team sheet tantrums, as I mentioned, post-match reviews and so on. So the content for the podcast is going to keep on coming, and we would love you to be along for the ride. So please click the like button on this podcast. Please subscribe. Please hit the little bell so you get notified for when we do live shows. And I just want to say thank you so much for everything you do for the podcast. We're onwards towards the first game of the league on Saturday, and I for one am absolutely delighted. And all that's really left to say, guys, is thank you so much, and up the Villa.